I get the outside shape of the instrument panel roughed out. I need a little bit of work with the files and stuff on it to get the finish shaped in there and trial fit it. Took it down to the hanger, cut it out with the bandsaw. I was going to start punching the holes in for the instruments, but I took this down there in the early afternoon, and then the weather had changed. It went from 10 degrees to low 30s and went from dry to snow to rain. This poster board kind of soaked up some moisture, and it blistered up here in the middle, so I couldn't do anything with that until I brought it back up here in the basement, let it dry out a little bit. It's gone down now. I glued this template, this pattern on with some Elmer's multi-purpose spray adhesive. My wife uses this on her jigsaw projects to glue the patterns onto the wood and then peel it off. And it works kind of the opposite of regular contact cement, spray-on contact cements I've used before. This can be used for temporary application. What it says here is you allow it to dry to 3 to 5 minutes for joining for a temporary, and for permanent bond you spray it and then put it together right away. That's kind of the opposite of what contact cement is, but anyway, it works. This stuff should peel right off, and I've got adhesive tape or masking tape over the aluminum anyway, so because that's a piece of 63 thousandths aluminum, and it's a little bit flimsy, not as bad as 40 thousandths or 20 thousandths, but to make it a little easier to work with, I went ahead and got a piece of 1/4 inch plywood and used the same spray adhesive and glued it onto the back, and that really made it nice for cutting on the bandsaw. That made the cuts go real nice on there. It was able to hold it nice and flat and firm, and there was no vibration with the bandsaw blade going through the aluminum, so that really worked out well. I got the instrument panel cut out. I took it to the bandsaw and cut out the rough shape around the outside of it, and then used various files to clean it up down to the lines. Then I took it into the shop and cut out the holes for the instruments. Now I had different options or ideas for how to cut those holes out. There's the one thing is have chassis cutters, punches that you can get. This one would take a 3 1/8, and these would take a 2 1/4. But those are real expensive, although I did find them on eBay where you can get them for less than $100 a piece. And if I were going to do very many of these, I think I'd go ahead and buy those. The other thing I thought about was sending it to the high school shop with my granddaughter, and they have a CNC router there, but I decided not to do that. After finding those templates online of the holes and the instructions on how to lay them out, I just went ahead and laid them out on here. And then of course I could have cut them out with a hole saw, but the hole saws are generally pipe size. Even one of these like this at 7/8, the hole is going to be bigger than 7/8. That's 55. That's pretty close to 7/8. Huh, I didn't measure this one before. 55/64. But anyway, they make such a ratty hole. They always vibrate. They're not true round, and they make such a ratty hole that it could have worked. Of course, I do have a 2 1/4, but I don't have a 3 1/8. I could have bought one, but that one would make a pretty close hole. This is Makita. Measuring the outside of that makes a pretty close hole. So that might have worked better, but my experience has been that they don't make very nice holes. So I decided, and I thought that the hole size on those pipe cutters, hole saws, was larger than nominal dimension anyway. But so I didn't use those. What I did use, I had this circle cutter, and I went ahead and sharpened it up a little different than what for the wood cutter. I give it a little bit more clearance angle on the back here, and just knocked off the sharp point just a little bit, rounded it over a little bit, sharpened it up, and then I set it up according to these instructions on here and cut those holes out. And it cut really nice. So those holes were cut out, and having that with that 1/4 inch plywood backer worked out real well. It give something solid for this pilot bit to go into to hold everything steady, so you didn't get a whole lot of vibration or anything. I've cut the holes out for the instruments. I just used a saber saw for that, and I was afraid that maybe it wasn't going to cut as cleanly because the saber saw is cut on the upstroke, whereas the bandsaw cuts on the downstroke. So when I had it on the bandsaw, it was pulling down into the plywood and into the table and make a better cut. But the scroll saw was cutting up through the plywood and into the aluminum, but it cut fine. It cut real well. The problems that I did have on here was I used these annular cutters. I used one of these annular cutters to cut pilot holes for these instrument cutouts, and they don't work very well in this cardboard. The cardboard doesn't have enough strength to keep the pilot, and there's just a pilot pin on that annular cutter. It's not a drill bit like on most cutters, so it goes into a pre-punched hole and just kind of spins in it and doesn't make a hole all the way through. But there's not enough strength, rigidity in this cardboard to keep that thing steady, and then it tears and it blocks up the cutter. So we made it work, but it's not the best choice for cutting through that cardboard. Anyway, the cutouts are done. I'm going to wait to cut out the holes for all of the controls and the electrical stuff for a little while. I do have some chassis punches here, and I was going to use for some of these holes, but looking at them, I don't have the right sizes. This is just a little kit I got somewhere a long time ago. I haven't used it for a while, but it does work pretty good. But I don't have the right sizes for any of these holes. I got this brand new set here a couple years ago, Harbor Freight. I thought it was going to work. Thought I'd be able to use it. It says 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 inch, and 1 1/4. Well, those are pipe size. Those are conduit size or something. That one says for 1/2 inch. It's actually 7/8 inch OD on the hole that one will punch out. So that's not going to work. These do a real good job for most of the holes. I've just learned that I can't use them in this cardboard. I need to take the file and clean up these holes, these ones that I punched out or cut out with the saber saw. And I'll probably need to deburr, trim up these holes and stuff. But I think the next step is to go ahead and bend these tabs on here to bend it in shape so I can start fitting it in the airplane to make sure it fits. I went around the perimeter and deburred the edges on the back side after taking that plywood off. This cardboard is too thick on this side to do that, but I'm going to leave that template on there until I bend these flanges over. So that's the next thing to do, is to bend this, and it's the right size that I can fit it in my brake, my 3-in-1 Grizzly brake, so I can go ahead and bend all those tabs here. I still have to notch out a little bit around here for the altimeter, and but all these other holes and everything I can put in afterwards.